Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guests today are two people who I love more than sandwiches. They're part of my support system, even though I may often say I'm a solopreneur. They are an important part of my success. They're here to celebrate my 3-year anniversary doing Lunch with Biggie podcast. Please welcome my wife, Kristen, and my daughter, Bella, to the podcast. What's going on, family?
Hi. Hello.
So I guess my first question always is, as you guys know, what's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
I feel like that's two different things.
Give me two different answers.
Okay. Sandwich, a pub sub, like pub sub, like any type of pub sub.
Okay. Really? That's interesting. Okay. What kind is there a particular one, pub sub?
I always get turkey and then I add all my toppings.
Okay. Cucumbers is one of them. And ranch dressing instead of condiments.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Kristen?
If I'm going to make a sandwich myself,
well, just
my
go-to
general is either a solid grilled cheese or just a plain BLT.
Oh, wait, can I change my answer?
Sure.
And then if we're going to eat a sandwich out, probably the best sandwich I've ever had is the Cuban sandwich at Sandwich, Miami.
Okay.
And I'm not just saying that because we were just there, but we've eaten there twice, and hands down, it's the best Cuban sandwich I've ever had. And we've had quite a lot of Cuban sandwiches in our lives.
We have. Kristen, Bella, do you have a...
Okay, wait, let me change my answer.
Well, you can add to your answer. Go ahead.
No, I'm changing it.
All right.
Not pub sub, even though classic.
I'm actually surprised pub sub was the answer, so go ahead.
I was...
Thank you for thinking it through.
Yeah. I think at home, grilled cheese, because we make those so much, but you can't mess it up unless it's burnt, but and I didn't tell you guys this, but I still think La Segunda's better.
Oh,
I'm sorry if you watch this podcast, Sandwich. I really loved your food, but I'm really sorry. Maybe it'll change once I have them in 2 weeks. But right now, best Cuban bread, though.
Okay. That's Gotcha. So I mentioned that the podcast turns 3. And I'm just kind of curious. When I told you guys a few years ago, actually probably 4 years ago, that I wanted to do a podcast, what were you guys thinking?
I just thought, okay, do it. Just add something else to your plate. Go for it. Whatever you do is always successful. So I just said, okay, go ahead.
What about you, Belle?
I don't know. I think same at the beginning, but then you just had some really interesting people on the podcast come. So it was interesting to see who you would have on every week.
Oh, I like that. And have you gotten anything out of it? Do you guys think I've gotten anything? Let's go with that. Do you guys think I've gotten anything out of doing the podcast?
I think you've been inspired by so many small brands and businesses,
and
for sure.
You've inspired other people too, hearing everyone's stories.
Because I always kind of think sometimes
you've collaborated a lot with the people. You've made really good connections and collaborated, and that has opened doors to other things. Mm-hmm. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. That's one of those where I always kind of sometimes think that way. I've always kind of wanted to ask you, Kristen. Sorry, my daughter thinks everything's funny. When I told you over, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago that I wanted to do Deli Fresh Threads, and I told you what the concept was, what really initially went through your head? Because I mean, I truly appreciate the fact that you're super supportive because this is not hey, I'm going to do a sandwich themed clothing brand. So I'm kind of curious, what exactly went through your head? I know, obviously, I tell people, you always say, just as long as we don't go bankrupt.
Yes, but that was my first response.
But seriously, what went through your head? And then what are your thoughts now as 11 years into it?
My initial thoughts were, how in the world are you going to pull this off? Is this really going to become something? And boy, was I wrong, because it has grown so much. I know whatever you put your mind to, it's it's good, you know, you pour your heart 100% into it. So I knew you weren't going to, am I allowed to say a bad word?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Half-ass it. So, I just, you know, I was like, okay, let's see where it goes. If you need a creative outlet, then do it. If you weren't, you know, you needed something. So
Yeah.
fill your void, do it. Let's see where it goes. And if it goes to something big where we are now, great. If it doesn't, just don't make us bankrupt and lose everything we've started.
I like that. I like that.
I mean, people may think I'm the most passive person in the world, but I mean, you know,
yeah.
if you want to do it, do it.
No, I appreciate that.
Wait, I have a question for you
Oh.
to piggyback that.
Go ahead.
Were you afraid to tell me how am I going to present this to my wife? Or how do I have to tell her and really present this? Sell it. Yeah.
No, I think to me, to be honest with you, I think you and I have always been really good at communicating. And I think I really made it a point to tell you, like, I was very honest with you, like how I basically told you I was dying every day. I didn't do something creative. And then I think that was like one part of it that I think you truly understood. And then especially since I had a clothing brand and you knew that I had a passion for that before. And then I think the other part was I think to me was the fact that, I mean, I really was cognitive of the fact of like, okay, how do I do this financially in a way where like I could have totally gone more. I've always been able to probably go more all in, but I've always kind of been held back because of the fact that I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that all these things work. Like now it's at a point where Deli Fresh Threads pays for itself and can build off of itself. So therefore that's the thing. But you know, I never really had a problem with it. And I think the big reason is because every time I told you or asked you the question about, like, you would say to me, like, what do you do if you won the lottery? What would you do? And so like, to me, I think that was kind of like, okay, she's okay to allowing me to think big. But at the same time, I did for a long time I always used to negatively kind of like present it, be like, oh, it's a crazy idea. There's a sandwich themed clothing brand.
You have always said that.
And I've always kind of said that, which has always been a negative because it's really like, I should be like totally all in on it, which I am. But it just was kind of one of those things.
Okay. Bella, when Daddy started the business, you were 6 years old. Do you remember anything?
No.
No?
I remember going to like sandwich eat-ups because like that's how like I feel like I remember like going after school and like trying all these restaurants.
And that was one of my favorite parts was being able to do that.
I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing I do miss because of COVID and other things. Not the sandwich eat-ups were always a great way of building community. And I thought it was cool because then everyone would finally get a chance to see you guys and meet you guys when you guys would be able to make it to one of them or whatnot. So that's always kind of one of those things that I liked. I'm always kind of curious because both of you have done some entrepreneurial type stuff through the years.
That's a lovely, nice way to put that.
Well, I mean, you've done some entrepreneurial stuff. Mm-hmm. Bella did was it like little good pies, which was like pies, little small pies, which I think was fantastic due to the fact that I think at the time you were like 13 doing it. And then Kristen, you did, you were doing Big Talk for Little Ears, and so I'm kind of curious about when you guys did these things. What, obviously it's kind of gone into a dormant phase right now or hibernation right now. But when you guys started it or did these businesses, why did you guys decide to wanted to do this? And then also what was one of the difficulties of it, of saying, you know what, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because sometimes a small business isn't what it is.
For me, the hardest part was it was very hard to run Big Talk for Little Ears on top of my full-time job and raising a teenager.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And in my full-time job, my mental load is depleted by the time I get home. So to pour everything I needed to into my side hustle, it was draining.
Yeah.
And it took a lot out of me. It's a hard work. So for all the time and effort that you put into it, on top of working your corporate job, I always say kudos to you, and I don't know how you do it.
Well, I do it because you help and you make other parts easier. So balance. Because if I had to do, if I was a solo parent, there's no way I'd be able to do any of this. So I truly appreciate the fact that you kind of take a brunt of a lot of the stuff, responsibilities of things that maybe that when I'm not doing certain things, you take it on. So I do appreciate that. What about you, Bella?
Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't remember how like I got like into it. I think it was over the summer that I did it. Oh, I started by just like baking for people over COVID because that's when I started learning how to make pies. And then I don't know, people were like, "Oh, people would pay for these." And then I was young, like middle school. I didn't know like
Yeah.
during the summer it was great because like I had free time.
But it's a lot of work trying to go to school and keep up with
Yeah,
homework
it's a
and
lot of
dance and then bake at the end of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sometimes like I've said this before, but it's like do the things you love, but like I feel like I was scared of like doing it to the point where it's like, oh, I don't love it anymore, because then it becomes work.
That's big.
Correct.
Yeah.
And by the way, that was a big inspiration for me when I would talk to bakers and talk to people who had dealt with food related items that were constantly doing things. I always bring you up about that. Like, how do you make it so that it's not boring because you're doing the same thing over and over again and it becomes repetitious? Because, what happens is when you make certain things, you want certain flavors and people want to make it. But then when you're producing things, you sometimes need to mix it up. And so that's something that I always kind of used. I always use your example and your question of that to talk to other people about that. So you've always kind of been in my mind, because I think to me, that's been the biggest one, is kind of using the podcast, doing all these other things. I sometimes think of it as a way of being able to, hopefully, it may be normal to you, but it's probably not normal to any of your friends or other people who have parents that run other businesses or do different things on the side. And so I'm hoping that it at least gives you an idea of like, hey, I can do something that I love. I maybe do a corporate job and still do something that I love, or do things on the side. So yeah. Kristen, you were going to say something?
What's been one of your, 2 questions. What has been one of your favorite businesses, creatives that you've had on the podcast?
Oh, that's a good question.
The past 3 years.
So I think I've had I really have had some interesting people on the show, which I think is
What's been your favorite person?
Who's been my favorite person?
Or brand, business.
Or brand. I mean, obviously I can't go wrong. Like, I did enjoy talking to folks from the Sandwich, Danny and Rosa. I think I love their story just because of the fact of like, they had 6-figure corporate jobs, making crazy money, and they wanted to make Cuban sandwiches. So I think to me that's inspiring and pretty amazing. Obviously the story of Gideon's, it's pretty. It's always a good one for me. I'll be honest. I kind of love when I talk to folks like the Kellys or like the Jeff's Bagel Runs, because it's kind of like I talk to them and then all of a sudden they like explode, or I feel like there's like an explosion that happens. Not saying that it's me karma, because it's them doing amazing stuff, but it's awesome to see their growth, and then at the same time inspires me. So I think those are the ones that kind of, at least right off the bat, they kind of stick out to me, where I'm like, that's awesome that they're kind of like, busting, they're busting their humps, but they're seeing stuff.
What's been one of your most what's been one of your most favorite moments since you've started Deli Fresh Threads, or a standout moment? I definitely love the interaction with like food celebrities. I think that's been pretty amazing to kind of see. Like one that stands out is obviously Jim Gaffigan, getting to meet him and interact with him, and him calling me like the deli guy, and just kind of wearing one of my shirts and stuff like that. Gary Vaynerchuk, all those are pretty amazing to me. I love the fact that based on what I created with Deli Fresh Threads, and then the podcast allowed me to have Biggie's Bomb Me, like the sandwich at Gnarly Barley, and just different sandwiches that are starting to come, from, pom-poms and stuff like that, which is something that I think is just kind of makes sense
for my brand, and the fact that other restaurants want to like have my input and kind of come up with something and put it on their menu. I think it's really special to kind of because everyone knows me as a sandwich person, but
Right.
So it's kind of cool to have actually have a sandwich.
Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of that's kind of one of the big ones. I really appreciate the fact, like, I want to kind of talk about a little bit about like the frustrations, like what are the hard parts? Because being like the number one question, Chris, you always ask me to ask when I talk about whenever I have a guest on, I'm pretty much always do like open consult here, and I ask both of them. I'm like, hey, what should I ask so and so I'm going to have on the show? And they're like, well, who are they? And I tell them, and then they kind of go. The number one question Kristen always asks is the balance question. But I'm always kind of curious, like, what's the frustration? Because obviously I work full time. I also I do the Deli Fresh Threads, and I do the podcast, and then there's also life. So what are the frustrating parts of me doing all these things? I'm always kind of curious. We sometimes talk about it, sometimes we don't.
This is going to sound...
but it's real.
It is real. During your busy season, when there's a lot of markets, when you're
Fall.
gone, like...
Fall
It
season.
is,
It's
yeah.
fall season.
September, October, November, really into December.
Yeah.
So the busiest time of year is when you're gone, like from 7 a.m. to sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then the next day you're either dead because it was such a long day or you had to drive. Just the weekends that you're gone, that's the hardest part for me, because we very much value our family time together very much. So, and I know it's just a season, it's just an increment in time, but that is hard for me. I would say that would be the biggest thing, is just your busy selling season.
Because you miss me, or just because in general?
Just in general. I mean,
Okay.
I do miss you, but
Bella?
just in general. I mean, some people will say, oh, they love when their husbands go away. Not that I'm needy or anything, but,
No, you're not.
I just...
I mean, we always party when you're gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's hard when you're gone
Yeah.
every weekend, because the work week is sometimes we're two ships sailing in the night, passing through the night past each other. So, but I've gotten used to it.
Yeah.
And as Bella's gotten older, we've had our fun girls' days, so we make the best of it for sure.
What about you, Belle?
I do agree with that, but also sometimes you're just like in your office, just like there for like the entire day.
Oh yeah, like
And
when
he's-
he's not selling,
Yeah,
he's hiding
like,
in his office.
on the weekend. Sometimes it'll be like, I'm almost done, and then you're there for like 3 more hours, and you're like, well, as you can see, I got a little bit done, but it's a work in progress, and it's just like I'm so proud of you, like with all of that, like you've done, and like you've grown so much, but like sometimes it's like just a weekend. This is work. I mean,
and it's not
work.
even like we can hang out in your office.
No, it's
because
you have to clean it.
just because.
Because I have to clean it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys wouldn't hang out there anyhow.
we might.
No,
I mean, if there was a comfortable place for me to sit,
no, there isn't.
yeah.
It's one chair. The rest is shirts. Everyone can see it on a reel. It's just shirts and boxes. So no, I totally get that. I think that's kind of one of the big. That's always the tough part, the balance of trying to do that. And there's sometimes when I'm better at it than others. And then at the same time, it's like you kind of there is a lot of thought goes into it when you do an event, especially when an event happens, because then you start thinking about, like, especially if the event is not great. And I tend to try to look positive, but then when the event is not great and you're like, dude, I spent all
hate
these
those days.
I hate those hours, because then it's like I could have spent time with my family, even if it was just hanging out at home. It would have been way better than making a few $100. But when it's awesome, then it's super energizing and super amazing. So it's a balance of trying to figure out how many markets to do, what markets to do, and things like that. That's always one of the hard ones, for sure. Yeah. Bells, you got a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What has been like, because I feel like more and more people like have like known you like in a community that own restaurants or small businesses, like what's your favorite part of like meeting all the people and like making the connections?
My favorite part is like having like things like having them on just like on the podcast or just in general, just like getting. I think I love seeing like owning a restaurant is super hard. So I think my favorite part of it is like a lot of people always ask me like, oh, why don't you open a restaurant? And I think to me like that is such a hard job to do that I don't think I could handle. I don't think I'd be able to handle it. Like you gotta have to be pretty special to be able to kind of, when you're dealing with something like that. So for me, my favorite part is just seeing someone do something that they love to do. That's been my favorite. And then just being able to have a connection with them. And then the fact that like they appreciate what I'm doing and I appreciate what they're doing. And then my whole thing is like, I want everyone to succeed. So for me, if I get to know them, then I appreciate them. Therefore I want to now promote them and I want to talk about them and I want to like have them on and things like that. I think that's kind of how I look at it. So that's been my favorite part of it. I think it's also just amazing hearing everyone's story, like of when you start doing that. And that's one reason a lot of times why I selfishly tell people I want to have them on the podcast. Because when we meet them or when you see me, when we go to a restaurant and like they're there, you see them for like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Or when I sell in an event, it's like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Some very quick small talk. There's no real conversation, no substance. So when I get to have them sit down and do a podcast,
you learn so much more.
I can learn way more. I spend, because it's not just the time that's recording, it's the little bit of time before and the little time after that I get to do. And sometimes the conversation after the podcast is probably even better than my podcast, to be honest, because they're kind of, they kind of let loose and they're like more relaxed and it's over and therefore they start talking and then you're able to hear them speak more freely. So that's one of the things that I enjoy about it. So yeah, that's kind of been the big thing. Kristen, you got any more questions?
I do have a question. What's next? If no money limitations, financial limitations, family limitations, what's the big picture? What would be next?
Can I reverse it first? I'm just kind of curious.
Sure.
I want to reverse it. No.
On me?
No. Like, what do you guys? I'm just kind of. I'm not asking you guys like limitations.
No reverse.
I'm just saying like, what do you guys like? What do you see? I mean, you guys obviously see me. So like, what is it that you guys see? Like you outside looking in, I'm already in here. You guys obviously see me and you're part of the circle. But like, the thing is like, what is it that you think this needs to become, the brand, the podcast? What do those things need to be?
I see you truly like, so even before you had Deli Fresh Threads, you are a very charismatic, personal, outgoing, friendly, great personality and person. And so I see my hope, my dream for you would to see you as some type of like TV personality for real.
Okay.
Not fake, for real.
You know, sharing your true love for sandwiches and or just small businesses, you know, in general.
Yeah.
Kind of
You
like
know?
Diner Drives and Dives. Like, you know how he like goes to all his restaurants?
But sandwich edition.
Sandwich edition.
Small business
or
edition.
Small business edition. Like you go to a town and you hit up like one. Oh, look, I'm already coming up with a concept. One small local
where are you?
sandwich shop.
And
One
small business.
sandwich shop, one place to go get like unique gifts, and then I don't know, a third place, and you
Like a creative, an artist or a creative.
yeah, something like that, and you go travel around because you do love to travel too. And actually, that's what our vacations are. We go and we eat at, we go explore, but we eat at local restaurants and we visit small businesses and we shop at small businesses when we travel. So
Yep.
I think that's a great, you know, TV show concept. Maybe you could talk to your friend Kat Pappas.
Oh wow! Talk about or Oxenfree, who does all the production.
Oh, yeah?
For
You've got
Blind
connections.
Kitchen. What about you, Bella? What do you have
What do
any
you see
thought?
a
Like,
big picture
do
for
you
Daddy?
see a picture of like, oh, this is what I can see my dad doing?
I don't see you doing your corporate job forever. I don't want that for you. We just need stars to align.
Is that going to be do I edit that part out, or what?
That's up to you.
Okay. I love it. What about you, Bella? Anything?
I don't know. I do agree. Like, I always saw you, like, on TV because, like, you are a very, like, extroverted person, which, you know, it's that only aspect that I don't understand how I'm your child because I'm so, like...
No, you're pretty extroverted.
Okay, but, like, not like you.
I've grown into this.
In every single other aspect, like, I'm your daughter, but
Yeah.
then, like, I feel like in that way it was so different. But anyway... since you are like so extroverted, like I did always see you like on TV, and like I know you always liked. I would probably see you like. I always saw you when I was younger, like judging a food show, because like I remember my large Food Network phase. So
We did have a large Food Network phase.
So like seeing you like judge those because like. I don't know, because like you were first always like a foodie and like always made food and like I mean you still always make food, but like
I find it very interesting that you guys both say this, because at the same time you also told me that I'm away from home too much. So then what's the right answer on that?
I know, but you'd be doing what you love and truly being paid for it too.
Yeah.
It comes down to both. It really does. You have to make money. You really do.
Yeah.
And I know that totally, like, those two visions that we had said for you totally didn't even address your clothing brand.
I noticed that, but I always kind of...
But you've always been told, we've been told by very close family friends that we value their opinions very much, that this is just, the clothing brand is just a stepping stone for something much bigger.
Yeah.
You've done some consulting gigs too, and you are very, very good.
Oh yeah,
at
that's
that.
true. You're good at that.
You are very good at helping other small brands.
you could be like
You're very good at that too.
Yeah.
So if anybody's looking
a business consultant
for their small brand, local business,
I appreciate
Anthony
the
is the
plug.
person
I appreciate
to
the plug.
contact. He's very good at it.
So I will tell you that, like, I've always kind of said that Deli Fresh Threads is like the lightning rod that kind of leads to all these things. So like, do I know or think that this is the end product? Like, who knows? My brand could end up being bought out by somebody else using the concept and just kind of doing it, and then I can go do something else, or it becomes an extension of what I'm doing. I don't know, but I kind of use them both. That's kind of the whole thing. And my whole thing was, and then you and I have talked about this, is the fact that I didn't want to. I didn't want to do the woulda, coulda, shoulda, so therefore I had to start something. And a lot of people sometimes go backwards and say, well, wouldn't you have done a sandwich shop and then done a clothing brand? And I was like, yeah, but I didn't want to open a sandwich shop because those like close in, like, you know, it's very hard to run a business and it closes in 2 years. So that's the reason why I did the brand, because I needed a creative outlet and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't know if this is like, maybe it's podcasting or like some kind of way of doing it. I didn't want to do, like, I was like, what can I do that I can control and I can actually do? You know, I didn't want to do YouTube channel or anything like that. I don't know. It was just like kind of how it started. So I'm curious, and to answer your question of where I kind of see, yeah, I do see something like that. Like, I do think, but I feel like I could become that person, like that SME, that sandwich matter expert, where someone comes in and like actually can do something like that. And I would love to be able to incorporate like the concept that you have. Obviously you'd be an executive producer, you know, but I would love to incorporate that where I can go somewhere and do that, because those are the things I love.
Maybe that's what we do. We get Bella off to college in 2 years, and then that's what we do.
We just go and
we leave
record,
both of our full-time jobs,
and we just record and we do this. And we go around the city.
We have our travel show.
Oh, okay. Hey, throw it out there. Put it out into in the universe. into the
I
atmosphere.
don't want to do podcasts and talk like this all day every day.
Bells, I have a question for you in the sense
good.
that you always, you jokingly say that I have a podcast voice when and so I'm kind of curious, especially now that you're on it. Kristen and Bella, does my voice change when I
Yes,
go
does.
on to podcast?
Absolutely, Anthony. How many times a day do I have to say lower your voice and your tone?
Okay.
I don't even see
Maybe
it.
I'll start saying, "Can you please use your podcast voice
Use my
with me, not your Cuban voice?"
Wow.
I
Okay.
don't even see it like that. It's like almost like, well, yes, like it's like more of like a low
chill.
type of voice, but also like it just doesn't sound like you in my opinion.
Okay.
Like not in like a bad way. It's just like the podcast voice. Like I don't know. Maybe everyone has that kind of voice, but
I don't think
you'll find out soon enough.
Do
when
I
you-
have a
when-
podcast voice?
You'll find out soon enough when you hear it.
okay. But you have. Oh no, I don't like listening to myself.
Neither
talk.
do I don't want to.
And I think the funny part about this is, and this is the great part about having both of you on the podcast, is that neither one of you really listen to podcasts.
I do.
Yeah, she does more than I do, and I like. It's almost like I want to be into it, but listening.
You just have to find a good one.
It just like beat like listening to someone.
So
Some
in case
people
you guys are
boring.
wondering, she doesn't listen to my podcast. So that's not, but nor do I need her to, but I just, and she also doesn't wear my brand. So, and yes,
How about we throw our wife under the bus?
well, neither one of you do. So it doesn't, neither
No,
one of
that's
you.
that's not what she. That's not what she was asking. Okay,
Why?
That's just what she was telling you to say.
Why am I throwing my wife in the bus?
Throw the wife in the bus.
I'm throwing her in the bus, not under the bus. We'll edit a bunch of this out, so you won't. It'll
It'll
like
be a 10-minute.
It'll be a 20-minute podcast if we're lucky.
If we're lucky.
We'll go with a few questions here. Is like, do you guys have any? We'll throw it out there since we're at year 3 doing. I'm year 3 doing this. What are some hopes that you wish for the podcast? Like any guests or small businesses that you think would be really fun for me to be able to sit and talk to that you guys
Yes,
would
I
love
did
to?
think of one.
No, tell me.
When we were on, because you're always saying, I need more guests.
Yeah.
I need more guests.
That's hard, man.
I absolutely love her. I've never met her. But Claire from Ido Claire, the
Oh,
cookie
yeah.
lady,
Oh, right.
She'll
who's
be
in
on.
Atlanta, and
She'll be
she's
on.
amazing, and her cookies are so good
Don't
and
worry.
so beautiful.
They're
She'll-
beautiful and good.
She'll be on. I've been waiting patiently for her to be
I know
in full business.
there's so much going on right
Yeah,
now.
for
She
her.
has a toddler,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she just
yeah.
started her business in her basement. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's one of those people that I met and got to know, and
Yes.
basically that's kind of how it works.
So all those connections, yes.
Yeah, all the
So
connections.
definitely her. I thought
I
of
agree.
her. Bella?
Maybe you could interview the La Segunda people.
That's all she wants. At this point, she's probably going to go to USF.
I think she is.
No.
Or have us on again.
I'll never have
I
you
was
as on.
thinking, I did think of somebody. She
ahead.
doesn't have a small business or a brand.
Okay.
But I think you should have your mom on.
If you watch
Mijo.
this, if you listen to this podcast and you would like to have my mom on, I'm actually going to make that the poll question on my Spotify. If you would like to have me interview my mom,
Mijo, you were my first business.
You've always been my business.
oh my gosh, everyone, this is
Look, you should just keep it unedited. No, I'm just kidding. Some stuff you have to edit out, but some of it you should keep.
so I'll make sure to keep that. But yes, I will put that as my poll question. You can go on, if you're on Spotify, you can actually answer the question: should my mom be on the podcast? Yes or no? And
I would listen to that.
We would do that. That's a lot of questions that I would have to come up with and ask. I don't know, and it's not a therapy session, guys.
It would have been. It's going to be more editing than us.
Yeah. So with that going on, my other question that I always like to ask folks is what's something that you like? What advice would you give someone for wanting to start something?
I guess I should take my own advice. Don't give up when it's hard. And make connections. Like make connections community. You've always said, reach out to your community. There's a lot of small businesses and brands that want others to be successful.
Like, be consistent. Like, make it a priority and make it like, yeah, I would say that, because it's like with habits too. Like, if you want to become something that's going to be like important to your life, you have to make it consistent and you have to prioritize it.
And also, failure is okay.
It's okay
I wish
to
I
not
was
be
told that
okay.
when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Failure or mistakes
Failure
are
is okay. Even if your perfectionist self doesn't believe it, failure is okay.
Okay, well, I wanna thank once again my two guests today, Bella and Kristen, for being on. They are like I said, it's totally true. They are my favorite thing. I love them more than obviously sandwiches. I love and support the fact that they both understand what I'm trying to do, and they roll with it. And the beauty of it is just like little things like the thoughtful gifts that my wife will find or my daughter will find that will be based on like sandwich stuff, like to keep the theme going for me. But at the same time, like they're very understanding. And I think that's something that means so much for me to be able to have, because when you run a small business, you need to have, like, as much as you need to have the self-confidence, because you're always going to have those moments of doubt. It's always great to have that support system, whether it's your spouse, your child, my child obviously being old enough to be that support system, but also just like your friends, and be able to have those people. I think that is like so instrumental, because, sometimes when you have a crazy idea, you need people to believe in you and, beside you. And so that is very helpful. I mean, obviously you, at the end of the day, consistency, not being afraid of failure, building that community and talking to those people, because you never know. I think that's the one thing that I can safely say, is that you don't know who you're interacting with and what you're doing, and especially when you're a small business, of who these people are and who can they possibly become or who they may know. And so if you treat everybody the same and you kind of give everybody that, show everyone what you're all about and what your business is about, those things will come back to you. And I truly believe in that karma. And at the same time, I also know that you may have those moments of doubt when you're pushing and you think that you're willing to kind of give up. And sometimes, trust me, I have those moments where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I even doing a podcast for the last 3 years? Like, who's actually listening to this? But then at the same time, you'll always will end up having someone come back and say something like, hey, I heard your podcast guest, or I saw this, or hey, I really appreciate what you do with your brand, or I got something. And then those are the little things that kind of give you that little bit of extra incentive to move forward. So that's my tip and my advice to be able to give you guys as I go into year 3 of the podcast. Thank you once again, Kristen and Bella, for being on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Okay. I would say check them out online, but you can, but
My Instagram is private.
yeah, so you're not going to actually see anything with them, but I would definitely say if you enjoyed the show, definitely subscribe. I'd love to hear some feedback. If you'd love to have them back on again to discuss other topics, by all means, please definitely let me know. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion.